So hello, my name's Pete Moore and I'm with Donald Lush. Donald and I bumped into each other in King's College London.
Yes.
And it seems like an entire lifetime ago when you could actually say hello and eat a curry together.
Yes.
Donald, where are you at the moment?
So right now I'm in my loft at home where I've been since March. I was one of the first people to get locked down because I actually had a cold. So I got sent home from work. So I've been here since March. This is the King's College London Careers Department, or one bit of it now.
And what's life at King's like now at the moment from your view?
It's well, it's just on the cusp. This week, some of the labs are starting to go back, and bits of the campus are opening up to kind of support that. So there's been 3 months of almost nobody at all being on campus, and it's sort of slightly getting a little bit more normal. And the college is thinking very thoroughly. In fact, it's been very responsive on this about how we can all get back onto campus and start working. So there's a lot of planning going on around that. But we're likely in the careers team to be probably not full-time back in the office till January.
And within the careers team, has this COVID, or I mean, I think it's the first chapter of COVID,
Yes.
affected your view as to how people need to be behaving and viewing what they're doing in terms of looking ahead and planning for their next step?
Yes. I mean, it's been interesting how people have reacted. So as soon as we locked down, a lot of our activity just died off as a team. So employers stopped doing internships and placements, or were trying to switch to online ones, and that took a bit of time while they figured that out and could open them up again. People stopped coming in such big numbers to career consultations because maybe they felt we couldn't help or didn't know what to do, or they were just too stunned by what had happened to be kind of able to ask questions. As the time has gone on, the transition's been quite amazing. Actually, we always felt we were very office and campus based, and it's turned out that we, with relatively little effort, have gone online.
Okay.
So the planning for next year is all online. All the stuff I do will be online, at least for the first term. Our careers fairs will all be online. We have software platforms that allow us to do that kind of thing. Our finding internships and placements and kind of looking after the people on them, that's all gone online. It's just that everything is perfectly portable online. So in one way, it's been surprisingly less disruptive than you might have imagined if we'd been told we were all going home and not coming back for months. And then on the other respect, we've been affected by the hiring freeze and the furloughing going on in universities. So my particular bit of the patch is with PhDs and research staff. So lots of the research staff I work with are away on furlough. Some of them will have contracts expire while they're on furlough. So that, there's some questions there to be asked that we haven't answered before. Some of our team are on furlough, so our work with employers has gone down a bit. So there are fewer people in that team at the moment, but several of them will be coming back in the next couple of weeks as we gear up for September. So it's kind of exactly as you said, it's kind of normal and not normal.
Yeah. And is there any view, because the contract staff are on furlough, presumably the money that was going to pay them hasn't gone out, but the time has run out.
Yes, so
there's how that gets resolved.
Yeah, and in a very mixed way. Where that funding's been available, or where funding council have wanted to do this, contracts have been extended, and some work has carried on anyway. It's not all lab-based work for researchers, and then some of it hasn't. So it's kind of affected people in a very unpredictable way.
And presumably the things like lab-based work, if the current people's contracts are extending, there's a physical space limit to how many new people can be brought in.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I think, I mean, the labs in lots of ways are, very, very used to the idea of working cleanly and safely anyway.
Yes.
So it's not been that difficult for them to adapt, but yeah, there'll be fewer people in there. And I think there's, some question about what the turnout's actually going to be come the autumn when there are new people starting things, whether people will want to come. We, like many universities, have lots and lots of students coming from China. We won't be having those this year. That's caused some severe financial problems, and that's having to be worked around. And then I think we're not talking about this very much at the moment, but 21, 22, assuming that COVID is managed in some way, or there's a vaccine, or whatever, is going to be an incredible year, because we're probably going to have 2 academic years running at once, and we're going to be pretty busy. So yeah, very kind of turbulent, fluid situation.
Wow. So will that just be for the 1 year you would do that, or does that
It will work its way through over several years.
Yeah.
So we'll have, that intake in 21. There'll be a bulge going through, and a very kind of rapidly changing labour market during that time, I would have thought.
I mean, it's a strange shaped crystal ball, but for the PhD students, particularly those who are liable to exit in the next sort of 6-9 months or whatever it's now become.
Yeah.
What do they need to be doing at the moment to be starting to look ahead?
Yeah, I mean, it's weirdly normal. It's the same things that you always have to do and should be doing anyway.
Okay.
The first one is to kind of understand where the labour market's at.
Yeah.
So the Institute for Student Employment has a blog which updates every week, which gives whatever anybody knows about what's going on as an update. And you need to know basically who's hiring. So, for example, if you're a health sciences or life scientist, PhD, or you're an engineer, or you're in medicine, things haven't really changed that much. There are plenty of jobs, if not more. And I've worked with people over the last 3 months, going for those kinds of roles and just getting them as they normally do. If you're in arts and humanities or social science, it's very different.
Okay.
That's shut down quite a bit. Outside,
will there be a bounce back on that, or?
Well, it's hard to know. I hope so. I don't think we're absolutely certain of that. We have a government that's very keen on the kind of science side of things, which I very much support. But questions are being asked about arts and humanities funding and social science funding, and where the money should be going. It's a bit of a debate at the moment. I'm not quite sure where that will end up. Also, the employers currently who've been hardest hit are on that side of things. So if you think just of theatres, for example, all of the business that goes on around that, not just the creative stuff, all of that's just more or less at a stop just now.
And it's not obvious that that's going to spring back.
I mean, it will, but it will be very different. Every day in the papers, there's hugely well-known organisations who are looking like they won't survive this.
So if you're a PhD student with a little bit of time on your hands, partly because you're not doing a 2-hour commute every day, what could you be using that time for in terms of building a future?
So definitely what's the labour market looking like? So you need to know what you're dealing with. And then I would be devoting quite a bit of time to networking. So as always, I think with a career, who do you want to know? Who do you need to know? Who can you help? Who can help you? If you've got time on your hands, you can be on LinkedIn and Twitter and various other platforms, finding people who share your interests and kind of talking to them. That's quite likely to help at least bring some opportunities. I would also be thinking in terms of flexibility and adaptability. So we went through something a bit like this in 2008, and the help that we were able to give as careers consultants then was about, well, think of what you're doing as more than one jump. It might be much better to be employed right now, even if it's not exactly the thing you want to do. You'll learn something. It's always easier to get a job if you've got a job, and you can use that to build for the thing you want to do when it starts to be available again. Certainly in 2008 and for a few years afterwards, lots of people found that quite helpful and found kind of very flexible ways through to where they were heading, or completely new directions that they'd perhaps not even thought about.
So and there's a sort of inertia game, isn't there? If you're out of work, then everything starts to stop, and then it's very difficult to get it moving again.
Yes, much harder. And employers just generally find people more employable if they're employed.
Yeah, they're used to coming to work. They're used to work ethic there, and there's always a potentially unfair view. Why has nobody else given them a job?
Why haven't you got a job? Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
And so there's that sort of suspicion that you have to talk through, and there could be lots of positive reasons, but you've got that as a barrier to get over from the beginning. I'm always surprised. I mean, I've got quite a large profile on LinkedIn, and very few people make direct approaches to me. Someone did yesterday from Vienna, and we've just come off a 1-hour call, and I think there's a distinct overlap there. And I think of the times that I've used LinkedIn for reaching out to people, it's probably about 1 in 20 when you get a response. But no one's reported me to LinkedIn as an offending person. They've just seen it as, that's interesting, but it's not appropriate.
Absolutely.
So to use the platform and to reach out and say, are there any openings in your place? What sort of thing you might be looking for in a year's time?
Or just go on a quest for information. So, I'm really interested in what you're doing. I'd like to know more. Could we have a chat? That's enough. You often have, one of the things that people hate about networking is that they're asking for stuff. So I usually advise people not to bother asking. Just build a relationship with somebody, and if it turns out that you might be able to work together, that will just happen. It will pop up naturally.
Yes, and the gift from their side is 10 minutes of their time just to talk with you.
Yeah.
And if that's what you get, then
Yeah.
there'll be a huge number of lessons learned. Potentially, okay, well, that rules out that industry.
Well, yeah, absolutely.
And that's a great lesson learned.
Yeah, that's incredibly valuable. Yeah.
Yeah. So, how about slightly further up the scale with the PhD students who are coming out? What's their market looking like?
Well, again, it very much depends where you are. So if you're in science, not that much different. Where the pinch is really being felt is in academic jobs generally, although the science, engineering, medicine, those kinds of things are much better, but they're still quite hard hit. So there's a tremendous shortage of academic posts being advertised right now. And particularly, quite a lot of the people I work with are often quite interested in professional roles within universities. So things like research management or faculty management, business management, those kinds of things, they've just completely stopped. So the amount of vacancies coming out is about half what we would expect for academic roles right now. And particularly PhDs, I'm not sure I've got a complete handle on this story, but certainly from what I'm seeing, PhDs who teach as part of their program are finding it a bit rough at the moment. It's looking like lots of institutions aren't planning to hire them, at least in the short term. And that's quite serious for some people because it affects their income.
Yeah, okay. And is there a sense that friendly competitors in other countries are going to be doing the same sort of thing, or will there be opportunities to reach out and maybe say, well, let's head overseas for 3 years or something?
Yeah, I mean, I think it gets political quickly, doesn't it? An awful lot depends on what happens in Britain. So in terms of where we are with the virus, we're quite a long way behind some countries, and particularly European ones like Germany, where people would expect to be looking for opportunities. It's a question of whether we're actually going to be able to travel. That's not clear at the moment. It will get clearer. The States has just announced that they're basically not letting anybody in for another extended period.
Okay.
So there's been quite a lot of bouncing around on the social media this morning about how that's going to affect researcher careers, because they're a big destination. So things are quite tight all around.
And it's all fairly contingent on the next announcement all the time, isn't it?
Well, yes, absolutely.
We know it was announced yesterday, but not tomorrow.
Yeah, and if a vaccine appears in the next few months, things will change again really quickly.
I mean, I've been travelling down the road about 1.5 miles to my office where I currently am for most of it, partly because it's the most isolated space in South Gloucestershire.
Oh, right. Yeah.
I had a 200 sort of occupancy building with 2 of us in it for most of the time.
Wow.
But there's now about 20, 30 people in the building. I take pretty well my whole office home every evening, though, because any day it could be that you can't travel tomorrow.
Yes, no, absolutely.
Even down the 1.5 mile sort of road. And I think that's not going to go away for a little bit.
No, I think we all need to be ready. I was lucky when I got sent home that time. I always keep a complete set of kit at home.
Yeah. What are the positives you've got out of the last couple of months?
Well, the positives are, I think the one that really leaps out is that our service is perfectly feasible online. So kind of the best example of that we've been running this course called Advancing in Academia for several years now. And although it's a sort of mix of online and live activity, although we think it's a great course, we've struggled a bit with getting engagement, and suddenly we don't. And actually, 4 weeks of teaching with 4 webinars, or 5 webinars actually, and the quality of learning is, it's fine. It's absolutely fine. And in terms of, I guess all of us have missed the actual being in the same room with people.
Yeah.
I think that there's a dimension to what we do has gone missing. But in terms of the kind of the one-to-one appointments I do, it's been absolutely fine. We do it on Teams, works really well. It's in some ways not a great deal of change. It just feels a bit different, and that's been really positive. So we've been talking about, when we go back to the office, what do people want? And I think everybody in the team is saying, well, I'll be quite happy to come in 2 days a week and work a couple of days from home. And suddenly people are really open to that. In a way that they probably weren't before. I think we were always told you had to be there in a very kind of interactive role like ours, but that isn't as necessary now.
And with the current need for increased space around us, that could become a necessity as well as a bonus.
Yeah, so if you kind of take our office, it has seating for 50 or so.
Okay.
There's no way the whole team could be in at the moment, but 20 could.
Okay.
And that would work fine.
Yeah.
I think the issue for me, I think it's probably the issue for everybody. I live quite a long way from the office, so travelling there is a problem that needs to be solved. But I feel I've kind of, I've done some of the best work I've done in this job in the last 3 months. I've found it very satisfying. It's been very busy, but very enjoyable, and being able to reach people and help them when it's difficult, it's very rewarding.
And is that something that can be carried forward? I mean, there's that sort of gross sabbatical element where
Yes.
you can take a breather. Almost by definition, you can't constantly live in a sabbatical.
No, no.
And so it's how we derive that,
Yes.
and stretch it into a new normal.
Yes, and I think we're going to have to find our way on that, because we don't really know. And I think employers are as well. So I think an awful lot of them must, I'm sure ours included, we have a lot of very expensive real estate that we might not need so much of. And I think I think a lot of what's happened to us is going to be here to stay, and a lot of people will really enjoy it. I was on a team meeting last week, and we were just going around the meeting saying, how's lockdown affected you? And almost everybody said, I've really loved it. I love not commuting. I really love the flexibility. I found I'm able to do the work. It's been really great.
So what sort of proportion of staff are furloughed within the university, and how secure are those positions? There's, around here, a lot of staff are furloughed.
Yes.
And I was quite sure if that means redundant, except you just start the word with F.
Well, I think if you are furloughed, I'm sure that question has come into your mind. Is this just the beginning of a process? And who's first on the line when job cuts have to come? So I don't know the exact percentage, but I think we've got about 35 out of the 50 who are actually working at the moment. So quite a few people who have families took the chance to enjoy the lovely weather we've had and spend some time with their children at home. And it's been really lovely. As I mentioned, institutions are in difficult positions with their budgets. They are going to be looking for cuts, I think. I know if I was a manager, I'd be looking at the people who've been furloughed first. And I think the people who've been furloughed would be thinking that as well. One thing I think institutions, I hope, are thinking about, and it's something for everyone thinking about their future to look out for, is that when activity picks up again, there's a danger of being short of staff.
Okay.
So that I think there's
going to be a rebound need, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, particularly in research, there will be a lot of people who were already thinking, the academic future is competitive, it's insecure. This has just pushed me over the edge to not want to do it at all. There are better opportunities somewhere else. And they'll go off and do those things. And we know from the data that once they do that, they don't come back.
Okay.
So I think there might be a talent shortage, actually. Okay. I think as we start to come back and to increase our levels of activity, I think we're going to find we're short of people.
There's possibly a sort of talent transition. I mean, the one thing you are allowed to do on furlough is training.
Yes.
And I keep on talking to people that I'm aware of in that situation, and people on my own team. Yes. There's none of the jobs that were needed don't exist anymore.
Yes.
But there's a new raft of activity that is needed.
Yes.
So looking at your skill set, looking at the required, the guesstimated required skill set, and then there's a lot of we're moving online. There's a lot of online opportunities that are out there. I mean, just shed loads of them. Some of it paid for, but quite a lot at the moment companies are making free or ridiculously low prices. And they're not idiots. They're wanting to draw everybody in order to get future sales. But it means that at the moment you've got the time, the availability, and potential to go do something.
Yeah, and I think if you feel you have a skills gap, now is a good time. If you've got some time on your hands, particularly if you're in any way in science, if you don't already have coding skills, you really won't lose if you start improving them or learning them from scratch. Even before we locked down, this was one of the biggest growth areas in the labour market for people with PhDs. That's only, given the way the world is going, that's only going to be even greater, I think.
Yeah. And I think if you've spent your life, I mean, I spent quite a lot of my life in a lab environment, and then found myself through curious ways in some form of industry without any idea about cash flows and budgets. And there's some very interesting quick bookkeeping courses. Yes. They give you a fascinating insight into the entrails of business. Yes. And some of the language, and there's a number of them that are free, and some of them are 20 quid to do. So some of that sort of looking sideways from where you are.
Yes, absolutely.
And getting some strengths. I actually think the odd lab leader would do well to go on a bookkeeping course every now and again.
Yes, I was on one of the course webinars last week, and one of the things I was talking to one of our professors, one of the things that your science career doesn't prepare you for is managing budgets and facilities, doing the line management of large teams of people, interacting with other departments, those kinds of things. It's assumed because you're a good researcher, you just kind of know how to do this stuff. Yeah. And of course, it's not true at all.
No. And industry is acutely aware that there is a danger of taking PhDs that they haven't picked that up. If you
Yes.
can start demonstrating that you have also put that up,
Yes.
you could be a really valuable chappie.
Yes, absolutely. And a good thing to talk to your supervisor about, actually, or your PI, is to say, well, what was your experience of taking up this level of responsibility? What is it you didn't know, and how did you deal with it?
Yeah.
And they all have, I mean, from the terrible nightmare to, good comic stories of what they did wrong, but they all have something to say on that.
Yeah, I've got a few of those.
Yes. Yeah. Well, getting the comma in the wrong place when you're ordering something from Germany,
Yeah,
you can end up with 400,000 things when you wanted 4,000, dead easily done.
absolutely. And that's getting worse. I know on our grant writing course, we particularly warn against when you're building your budget on an online sheet.
Yes.
Multinational teams.
Yes.
Go through it with your calculator, because commas and dots mean different things on different spreadsheets. And
are we all working in millimeters?
yeah. There was that favourite one of was it the Russian and the Americans who tried to join their spaceships together. One was inches and one was centimetres. It's very easy to happen.
Yeah.
Look, Donald, that's been lovely to engage with you again at a distance.
My pleasure.
And fascinating to see how life's going on within KCL at the moment. And hopefully next time it'll be over another curry. And
I will look forward to that. And thanks ever so much for inviting me on.
Okay, well, thanks for your time.
Thank you.